There are moments when the past doesn't just knock on your door. It walks right in and forces you to remember everything you tried to forget. I'm going to tell you the story of Emma Richardson and Grace Miller, the girl who kissed her beneath the live oaks of Hyde Park 12 years ago, the girl who promised her forever, and then vanished without a trace. Emma returned to Austin when her father collapsed at home. She rushed to Seton Medical Center expecting the worst. What she didn't expect was to find Grace standing in his hospital room, wearing scrubs, a wedding ring, and a last name that didn't belong to her. Grace pretended they were strangers. She extended her hand with a professional smile as if they'd never tangled their fingers together in the dark, as if those whispered promises under the Texas stars had never happened. But Emma saw the truth in her eyes. The same hunger, the same fear. Because what Grace had been hiding for 5 years wasn't just a marriage. It was an entire existence built on choosing safety over truth. And now that Emma was back, everything Grace had carefully constructed was about to shatter. This isn't just a story about lost love. It's a story about courage, forbidden desire, and two women who must decide if they're brave enough to choose themselves, even when the whole world is watching. Stay with me until the end to discover this story. See you soon. The woman standing beside her father's hospital bed wore the same perfume from 12 years ago. Emma knew it before she saw her face, before her eyes confirmed what her skin already recognized. And when she finally lifted her gaze from the white linoleum floor of Seton Medical Center, when her pupils found that face she'd tried to forget across 3 countries and 10 failed relationships, she felt the air escape her chest, as if someone had just driven a knife between her ribs. It couldn't be. Grace Miller stood beside her dying father's bed, hands clasped over her stomach, wearing a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. A nurse's smile, a stranger's smile. Someone pretending not to recognize you while the entire world crumbles in slow motion. "Emma Richardson," Grace asked, extending her hand as if she'd never kissed her beneath the live oaks of Hyde Park, as if she'd never promised her eternity on sleepless adolescent nights, as if the last 12 years had erased everything. "I'm Grace Harper, the nurse assigned to Mr. Richardson. Welcome." Harper, not Miller. The wrong last name fell on Emma like a stone into a lightless well. Grace had changed her name. She'd gotten married. And now she pretended, with an acting performance so perfect it hurt more than any goodbye, that they were complete strangers. Emma extended her hand. Her fingers trembled. When Grace's skin touched hers, it was like touching a live wire. Electrical current, muscle memory, 7,000 miles of distance disappearing in a second. "Nice to meet you," Emma murmured, her voice broken inside though it sounded almost steady outside. "How's my father?" Grace pulled her hand back too quickly, as if it burned, as if she felt the same thing. But her face remained a professional mask, impenetrable, as she pointed to the vital signs monitor with a mechanical gesture Emma had seen in hundreds of doctors before. "Stable for now. The doctor will be in within an hour to explain the treatment. Are you here alone or—" "Alone," Emma responded, and the word felt like a confession. Grace nodded. She wrote something on a clipboard. Her fingers gripped the pen too tightly. Emma knew that gesture. She'd seen it 1,000 times when Grace was nervous, when she was lying, when she was trying to maintain control while everything collapsed inside. "If you need anything, I'll be at the nurse's station," Grace said, without meeting her eyes. "Shift until 8 tonight." And she left, just like that. No more. 12 years of silence summarized in 30 seconds of impeccable acting. Emma stood in the middle of room 304, breathing the smell of disinfectant and illness, watching Grace's back disappear down the hallway like a ghost, refusing to be exorcised. Her father slept. The monitors beeped. And she, Emma Richardson, 32 years old, successful architect in New York City, A woman who had rebuilt her life from scratch after fleeing Austin as if the entire city were on fire, found herself crying silently because the woman beside her father's bed wasn't who she claimed to be. She was Grace Miller, her first love, her only truth. And now she wore another man's last name. Subscribe now. YouTube prioritizes subscribers, and those who aren't subscribed miss out on future stories. Emma's cell phone buzzed in her leather jacket pocket. It was Sarah, her younger sister, asking if she'd arrived safely at the hospital. Emma didn't respond. She couldn't. Her fingers kept trembling. Her head was spinning. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw Grace with that damn wrong last name, with that stranger's smile, with that gold ring on her ring finger shining under the fluorescent lights like a death sentence. She approached the bed. Her father looked smaller, more fragile. Robert Richardson, the man who had built 3 hardware stores with his own hands, who never cried, who had taught her to change tires and negotiate with suppliers before teaching her to put on makeup, now lay connected to tubes and monitors, breathing with difficulty. "Dad," Emma whispered, taking his hand. The skin was cold, too cold. "I came as fast as I could." Robert didn't respond. He remained asleep, with morphine running through his veins. The doctor had been clear on the phone. Severe pneumonia, cardiac complications, uncertain prognosis. "Come soon," he'd said, "if you want to say goodbye." But Emma wasn't ready to say goodbye. Not to her father, and definitely not to Grace. Not again. Not when she'd just found her. She sat in the chair beside the bed, that green plastic chair she'd seen in 1,000 hospitals, and for the first time in 12 years allowed herself to remember. Not fragments, not flashes. The complete story. From the beginning. Grace Miller had appeared in her life when they were 7 years old. Neighbors. 2 houses apart in Hyde Park. That tree-lined neighborhood of historic homes where crepe myrtles climbed the fences, and Sundays smelled like BBQ brisket. They'd been seated together on the first day of 2nd grade at Austin Elementary, and Grace had shared her lunch without Emma asking. A peanut butter sandwich, apple juice, and a shy smile that melted something in her chest that didn't have a name yet. They became inseparable. Recess, birthdays, entire afternoons playing in Zilker Park. Best friends. The sisters neither of them had. And then, when they turned 15, something changed. A look that lasted too long. A hand brushing another by accident that no longer felt like an accident. A stolen kiss beneath the live oaks the day Grace turned 17, while the entire city danced at a summer festival. "I love you," Grace had told her that night, lips swollen and eyes shining. "I've always loved you." "Me too," Emma had responded, and it was the biggest truth she'd ever told in her life. For 2 years they were one. Secret girlfriends, lovers in the shadows. Because in Austin, in 2009, 2 girls who loved each other couldn't shout their love from the rooftops. They had to hide it, disguise it as friendship, keep the letters, delete the messages, kiss only when they were sure no one was watching. And it worked. For a while. Until Grace's parents found out. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, trying to stop the tears threatening to overflow. She didn't want to remember that night. Grace's mother's scream. The threats. The door locked with a key. Grace's silence on the other side. So deafening it still hurt in her chest 12 years later. 3 weeks later, Emma had fled to New York. University scholarship. New life. Clean slate. She'd left everything behind. The city, the family, the friends. And Grace. Especially Grace. Because staying was impossible. Because the look of disappointment in her own father's eyes when she confessed was worse than any insult. Because in Austin, in 2011, being who she was meant choosing between self-love and family love. And she chose exile. For 12 years, Emma had built a life on the East Coast. Architecture, success. Empty relationships that never went anywhere because no woman had Grace Miller's honey-colored eyes. None laughed like her. None looked at her as if she were the only real thing in a cardboard world. And now she was here, back in Austin, at Seton Medical Center. And Grace was 50 yards away, pretending to be a stranger, with a gold ring screaming marriage. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah insisting. Emma wrote a quick message. "Got here fine. Dad's stable. I'll call you later." She lied. Nothing was fine. Everything was a disaster. Hours passed. Emma didn't move from the chair. She watched the evening light filter through the window, tinting the walls orange. She watched nurses come and go, checking monitors, adjusting doses. But Grace didn't return. She stayed away. Professional, distant, until 7:30 at night. When the door opened and Grace entered with a tray of medications, Emma felt her heart stop. She wore her hair pulled back in a high ponytail. She'd removed her makeup. She looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the 17-year-old Grace who had promised her eternity. "I need to administer the antibiotics," Grace said, without looking at her. Her voice sounded tired, broken, as if she'd been crying in the hospital bathroom for the last 6 hours. "Okay," Emma responded. Silence. Grace approached the bed. Her hands trembled as she prepared the injection. Emma watched her. Every movement, every breath, the curve of her neck, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating. 12 years, and that gesture was still the same. "How long have you been working here?" Emma asked, because the silence was unbearable. 5 years, Grace responded without looking up. "Since I finished school. Do you like it?" "It's a job." Another pause. Grace connected the IV. Her fingers brushed Robert's arm with a delicacy that reminded Emma of how she used to touch her. Carefully, reverently, as if she were something precious that could break. "How have you been?" Grace asked suddenly, still not looking at her. The question floated in the air like an unpinned grenade. "Good," Emma lied. "I work in New York, architecture. I have my own firm. Doing well." "I'm glad." But she didn't sound glad. She sounded hollow, as if the words meant nothing. "And you?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer, though the ring on her finger said it all. "How have you been?" Grace finally looked at her, and in that moment, with eyes full of something that looked like pain and regret and contained rage, Emma knew the performance had ended. "I got married 5 years ago," Grace said, her voice barely audible. "To Michael Harper. He works in finance. He's good to me. My parents adore him." Each word was a stab wound. "Do you love him?" Emma asked, though she knew she shouldn't, though she knew the answer would destroy her either way. Grace opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "Does it matter?" "Yes," Emma responded. "It matters to me." "It shouldn't," Grace whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It's been 12 years, Emma. 12 years. You left. I stayed. And life went on. For both of us." "Did it go on?" Emma asked, standing from the chair. She took a step toward Grace. Just one. But it was enough to make the space between them feel charged with electricity. "Or did you survive?" Grace froze. Her eyes, those honey-colored eyes Emma had seen in dreams for 12 years, locked onto hers. And for a second, just one, the mask cracked. The professional nurse disappeared. And what remained was the 17-year-old girl crying beneath the live oaks because her world was falling apart. "Don't do this," Grace whispered. "Please." "Do what?" Emma asked. "Remind you that we existed? That we were real?" "We were girls," Grace responded, her voice trembling. Stupid girls who didn't know anything about the world. We knew what we felt. And look where that got us. Emma took another step. Now they were inches apart. She could smell her perfume. That damn perfume that was still the same. Gardenia and vanilla. The scent of all her sleepless nights in New York. "Are you happy?" Emma asked, in a voice so low it was barely a whisper. Grace closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. Slow, silent. "You don't have the right to ask me that," she responded. You left me alone. You left me to face everything alone. And now you come back after 12 years and pretend that..." "That what?" Emma interrupted. "That I still feel the same? That I never forgot you? That every woman I was with was a shadow of you?" Grace opened her eyes. She looked at her with a mixture of fury and desperation. "Stop doing this," she whispered. "Please, Emma. Stop making me feel..." "What?" Emma pressed. "Alive?" And then it happened. It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out. It was instinct. Memory. 12 years of absence condensed into a second of madness. Emma kissed her. Her lips touched Grace's with the same desperation as that night beneath the live oaks. And for a second, glorious and terrifying, Grace responded. Her hands clutched Emma's jacket. Her mouth opened, and the entire world disappeared. But it only lasted a second. Grace pulled away as if she'd been burned. Her eyes were wide, terrified. She brought a hand to her lips, as if trying to erase what had just happened. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. This can't happen. It can't." "Grace." "I'm married," she shouted, her voice broken. "I'm married, Emma. Do you understand what that means? I can't do this." And she ran out of the room, leaving the medication tray abandoned on the side table, leaving Emma standing in the middle of the room with a broken heart and the taste of gardenia and vanilla on her lips. Emma collapsed into the chair. She covered her face with her hands. And for the first time in 12 years, she allowed herself to cry for real, without control, without dignity. Because she'd returned to Austin to say goodbye to her father, and she'd reunited with the only love of her life. And that love now belonged to someone else. The monitor beeped. Her father kept sleeping. And outside, in the hallway of Seton Medical Center, Grace Harper cried in the third-floor bathroom, wondering how the hell she was going to survive this. If this doesn't deserve a like, I don't know what does. Emma didn't sleep that night. She stayed in the green plastic chair until her legs went numb and her back begged for mercy. She watched the hours drag on the wall clock. 11. Midnight. 1 in the morning. The hospital sank into an unnatural silence, interrupted only by the constant beeping of monitors and the muffled footsteps of night shift nurses. Grace didn't return. Another nurse came in at 2 in the morning to check Robert's vital signs. An older woman, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, who offered her watered-down coffee and a compassionate smile Emma didn't deserve. Her name was Dorothy. She'd been working at the hospital for 30 years, and when she saw Emma's state, swollen eyes, trembling hands, gaze lost on the wall, she simply put a hand on her shoulder and said, "The first day is always the hardest, honey, but your dad is strong. He's going to make it through this." Emma nodded. She didn't have the strength to explain that it wasn't just about her father, that the first day was hard because 12 years of poorly healed wounds had just torn open all at once, that she'd kissed a married woman in a hospital, and that kiss had tasted like hope and destruction at the same time. Dorothy left. Emma kept staring at the wall, and when dawn began to filter through the window, tinting the sky pink and orange, her father finally opened his eyes. "Emma?" Robert murmured, his voice raspy from days of intubation. "Dad," she responded, jumping up. She approached the bed, took his hand. Her father's eyes were glassy, confused, but conscious. I'm here. I came as fast as I could. Robert tried to smile. It was more of a grimace of pain. My girl, he whispered. You came all the way from New York. Of course I came. You're my father. You shouldn't have spent so much money. The ticket. It doesn't matter. Emma interrupted, squeezing his hand. The only thing that matters is you getting better. Robert coughed. A dry, painful cough that shook his whole body. Emma looked for water, helped him drink. When the cough subsided, her father looked at her with those gray eyes that had always been able to see through her. You look tired, he said. Did you sleep at all? A little. Emma lied. Liar, Robert responded, with a glimmer of humor in his gaze. You were always terrible at lying. Emma tried to smile. It didn't work. I'm fine, Dad. Really. But Robert wouldn't let go with his gaze. He studied her, as if he could read on her face everything that had happened the night before. And maybe he could. 12 years of distance hadn't erased the fact that this man knew her better than anyone in the world. Did you see Grace? He asked suddenly. Emma froze. Her heart gave such a violent lurch she thought the monitors would detect it. What? Grace Miller, her father repeated, his voice tired but clear. She works here. She's been taking care of me since I arrived. She's a good nurse, very professional. She told me she remembers you, from when you were kids. The world tilted. Emma grabbed the bed rail to keep from falling. Yes, she managed to say. I saw her. And what? Did you talk? Emma closed her eyes. The kiss, the taste of her lips, the tears in her eyes. A little, she responded. Not much. She's busy with her patients. Robert looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, as if he understood more than Emma was saying, as if the 12 years hadn't erased his memory, as if he still remembered the night his daughter confessed she loved another woman. The night everything changed. You should rest, Emma said quickly, changing the subject. The doctor will be here soon. You need to be strong for treatment. Her father didn't respond. He just closed his eyes and let silence envelop him. Emma left the room. She needed air. She needed to move. She needed not to think. She walked through the hallways of Seton Medical Center, that building that seemed frozen in time, with its limestone walls and interior courtyards full of crepe myrtles. It was early, barely 6 a.m, shift change, tired nurses saying goodbye to fresh nurses, doctors dragging their feet toward their cars, the smell of coffee and donuts drifting from the first-floor cafeteria. And then she saw her. Grace was in the parking lot, standing next to a silver Honda Civic, talking on the phone. She wore street clothes, dark jeans, white blouse, hair loose falling over her shoulders. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept either. Her voice came in fragments, carried by the morning wind. No, honey. It was just a long shift. Yes, I'm heading home now. No, nothing happened. Honey. The word fell on Emma like acid. Grace hung up the phone. She stood by the car, head tilted back, looking at the sky beginning to turn blue. And then, as if she felt she was being watched, she turned her head. Their eyes met. The parking lot could have caught fire and neither of them would have noticed. Grace looked down first. She opened the car door. She was going to leave, to flee. Again. But Emma couldn't let her go like this. Not after what had happened. Grace! She shouted, running toward her. Grace stopped, her shoulders tensed. But she didn't move, as if she were nailed to the ground. Emma reached her, breathless, heart pounding in her chest. We need to talk, she said. There's nothing to talk about, Grace responded, without looking at her. Really? Emma asked. after what happened last night. Last night was a mistake, Grace said, her voice firm but trembling. A mistake that won't happen again. A mistake? Emma repeated, feeling anger starting to boil in her chest. Is that what it was to you? Grace finally looked at her. Her eyes were red, swollen. She'd been crying, probably all night. Emma, please, she whispered. Don't make this harder than it already is. Harder? Emma exclaimed. You think this is hard. Do you know what was hard? Leaving you, spending 12 years trying to forget you. That was hard. And now I come back and find you married, pretending we mean nothing, and you ask me to. What did you expect? Grace shouted, her voice broken. That I'd wait for you? That I'd stay frozen in time? You left, Emma. You left without looking back, without a call, without a letter, nothing. And I stayed here trying to pick up the pieces, trying to be who my parents wanted me to be, trying to survive. You could have looked for me, Emma responded, tears streaming down her cheeks. You could have. Looked for you? Grace interrupted with a bitter laugh. For what? To drag you back to a place you hated? To ask you to choose between your future and me? I already knew your answer. You chose it the day you bought that ticket to New York. The words were like punches. Emma stepped back, feeling the ground open beneath her feet. I thought you'd understand, she whispered. I thought that I'd understand? Grace asked. Understand what? That I wasn't enough for you to stay? That your freedom was more important than us? It wasn't like that. Well, then how was it? Grace shouted. Explain it to me, because 12 years later I still don't understand. I still wake up in the middle of the night wondering what I did wrong, what I said wrong, why I wasn't enough. You were always enough, Emma responded, her voice broken. You were everything. You were my entire world, Grace. But staying meant destroying myself. It meant hiding forever, living in the shadows. And I couldn't do it. Grace closed her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and devastating. I could, she whispered. I stayed in the shadows for 5 years, until I couldn't anymore. Until I met Michael. And he was safe, normal, what my parents wanted, what society expected. And I married him because it was easier than keep fighting. Do you love him? Emma asked again, though she already knew the answer. Grace opened her eyes. She looked at her with a sadness so deep Emma felt she was drowning in it. I learned to love him, she responded. In my own way. Not like I loved you. It could never be like that. But he's good to me. He takes care of me. He respects me. And that has to be enough. Has to be? It's what there is, Grace said, wiping tears with the back of her hand. It's my life now, and you have yours. In New York, with your firm, with your success, with your freedom. An empty freedom, Emma responded, because none of those things mean anything without you. Grace closed her eyes again. She took a deep breath, as if gathering all her strength for what she was going to say next. Emma, you have to let this go, she said, her voice firm but trembling. You have to let me go, for your sake, for mine, for everyone. I can't. You have to. And you? Emma asked. Can you? Grace didn't respond. She stood by the car, eyes closed and tears streaming, unable to voice the lie they both knew it was. The silence stretched between them like an abyss. And then, without saying anything more, Grace got in the car, started the engine, and drove away. Emma stood in the parking lot, watching the silver Civic disappear down Congress Avenue, taking with it any hope she'd had that this would end in any way other than disaster. She returned to room 304. Her father was still asleep. The doctor had come and left a treatment summary: intravenous antibiotics, respiratory therapy, constant monitoring, reserved but optimistic prognosis, 2 weeks minimum hospitalization, 2 weeks, 14 days in Austin, 14 days with Grace 50 yards away, 14 days of torture. Emma dropped into the chair and covered her face with her hands. Outside, the sun kept rising. The city was waking. And somewhere in Austin, Grace Harper arrived at her house, kissed her husband, and pretended everything was fine. But they both knew the truth. Nothing was fine. And the cracks had just started to show. If any part of this story resembles your life, the hype button helps keep it from staying silent. The following days were an exercise in emotional survival. Emma established a military routine. Arrived at the hospital at 8 in the morning, stayed until 9 at night, avoided the hallways during Grace's shifts. When they crossed paths, because it was inevitable in a 4-story hospital, they exchanged professional greetings. Good morning, good afternoon. How is Mr. Richardson doing? Improving, thanks. Nothing more. As if the kiss had never happened. As if the conversation in the parking lot hadn't opened wounds that had been half closed for 12 years. But Emma saw the cracks. In the way Grace avoided looking at her directly. In how her hands trembled when changing IVs. In the way she ran out of the room as soon as she finished her work, without the casual chats she had with other patients' families. And Grace also saw them in Emma. In her increasingly deep, dark circles. In how she'd lost weight in just a week. In the way she pretended to read magazines while actually just watching the clock, waiting for Grace's shifts to see her even for 5 minutes. It was unsustainable, and they knew it. On the 5th day, Sarah finally arrived from Dallas. Emma's younger sister, 26 years old, industrial engineer, married to an automotive company executive. She arrived with suitcases, snacks, and an avalanche of questions. Why didn't you tell me you were this bad off? She confronted Emma in the hospital cafeteria. You look terrible. Are you eating? Sleeping? I'm fine, Emma responded, stirring coffee she had no intention of drinking. Liar, Sarah said. I know you. Something's going on. And don't tell me it's just about Dad, because I saw him and he's improving. So, what is it? Emma looked at her sister. Sarah had the same gray eyes as their father, the same direct gaze that didn't accept evasion. And suddenly, Emma felt so tired of pretending, of carrying the weight of 12 years of secrets alone. Grace is here, she said simply. Sarah froze with her coffee cup halfway to her lips. Grace? She repeated. Grace Miller? Your Grace? She's not my Grace, Emma responded, her voice broken. She's someone else's wife. And then, for the first time in years, she told her sister everything. The reunion, the kiss, the conversation in the parking lot, the days of torture. Sarah listened in silence, eyes growing wider, until Emma finished with her voice choked with tears. Oh, Emma, Sarah whispered, taking her hand. What are you going to do? I don't know, Emma responded. Survive the 2 weeks. Go back to New York. Forget this happened. Can you forget? Emma laughed without humor. Did I have a choice the last 12 years? Sarah squeezed her hand. This is different, she said. Now you know she still feels the same. She's married, but unhappy. That doesn't change anything. Are you sure? Emma opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Need to see you. Tonight. 10 p.m. Parking lot. No signature. None needed. Emma felt her heart stop. Emma arrived at Seton Medical Center's parking lot 10 minutes before 10. The Austin sky was clear, dotted with stars you could never see in New York from light pollution. The night was warm, with that characteristic city smell, a mix of live oak trees, car exhaust, and BBQ smoke from nearby food trucks. She stood by a light post, hands in her jacket pockets, trying to control the tremors running through her body. Sarah had asked where she was going. Going for a walk, she'd lied. Need air. Her sister had looked at her with those all-knowing eyes, but hadn't insisted. She just said, "Be careful." 10 o'clock. The silver Civic entered the parking lot like a ghost. The lights went out. The door opened. And Grace got out wearing the same clothes from that morning, but with her hair loose and eyes swollen from crying. They looked at each other from a distance. 10 yards that felt like miles. Grace walked toward her slowly, as if each step cost her an eternity. When she was close enough, Emma could see her hands were trembling too, that her breathing was irregular, that she was just as terrified. "I came," Grace said, her voice barely audible. "I see that," Emma responded. Silence. Just the sound of the nocturnal city. Sirens in the distance. Music filtering from some bar on 6th Street. The wind moving tree leaves. "I shouldn't be here," Grace whispered. "But you are." "Emma." "Why did you text me?" Emma interrupted. "If this is to tell me again that it was a mistake, that you're married, that I have to forget you, save it. I already know." Grace closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and when she opened them, there was something different in her gaze. Something broken, desperate. "Because I can't anymore," she said. "Because I've been pretending for 5 days that I feel nothing. 5 days working double shifts so I don't have to think. 5 days avoiding you like you're a contagious disease. And it doesn't work. Nothing works." Emma felt something loosen in her chest. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "What do you expect from me?" "I don't know," Grace responded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't know anything anymore. I just know that when I saw you that first night, when you walked into that room, it was like the last 12 years disappeared. Like everything I built, everything I pretended to be, crumbled in a second." "Grace." "Let me finish," she interrupted. "Please. I need to say this. I need you to understand." Emma nodded, though each word was like a dagger in her chest. Grace wiped tears with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath, and she started talking. "When you left, I collapsed," she said. "Completely. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. My parents thought I was sick. They took me to doctors, psychologists. Nobody understood what was wrong, and I couldn't tell them. I couldn't confess that I was broken because the woman I loved had fled to another coast." Emma clenched her fists inside her pockets. Each word was worse than the last. 2 years passed, Grace continued. 2 years of mandatory therapy, antidepressants, my parents watching me like I was going to break at any moment. And when I turned 21, I met Michael at a family party. He was a friend of my cousin's. Nice, stable, everything opposite to us. The us floated in the air like an open wound. "We started dating," Grace said. "And it was easy. So easy. He didn't make me feel that fire you made me feel. He didn't take my breath away. He didn't make me tremble. But he was safe. And after years of pain, safe sounded like a blessing." "And you married him for safety?" Emma asked, unable to contain the bitterness in her voice. "I married him because I was tired of fighting," Grace responded. "Tired of hiding. Tired of disappointing my parents. And he offered me normalcy. A life I could show. A life without secrets. Without shame. Without you." The last 2 words were barely a whisper. "And did it work?" Emma asked. "Did you forget?" Grace laughed. It was a broken, bitter laugh, full of pain. "Never," she responded. "Not a single day, not a single night. I carried you with me everywhere. In every song. In every sunset. Every time Michael kissed me and I closed my eyes and saw your face. Emma felt tears starting to roll down her cheeks. Then why do you stay with him? She asked. Because he's my husband, Grace responded. Because 5 years ago I made a promise before God, before my family, before everyone, and I can't just break it because you came back. And what about your promises to me? Emma asked, taking a step toward her. The promises we made beneath the live oaks? Don't those count? We were girls, Grace responded, but her voice no longer sounded convincing. We were us, Emma said, and you still are. I can see it. In your eyes. In the way you tremble when I'm near. In how you avoid me because you know if you don't, everything's going to explode. Grace stepped back, as if the words burned her. You can't ask me to do this, she whispered. You can't ask me to destroy my life. I'm not asking you anything, Emma responded. I'm just telling you the truth. That I never forgot you. That every woman I was with was a shadow of you. That I've been living half a life for 12 years because the only person who made me feel whole stayed here. Stop, Grace shouted, covering her face with her hands. Stop, Emma. I can't hear this. Why? Emma pressed. Because it's true? Because you know you feel the same? Because I'm going crazy, Grace shouted, lowering her hands. Her face was red, wet with tears. Because every time I see you, I feel like I'm drowning. Because that night when you kissed me, for 1 second I forgot everything. I forgot I was married. I forgot the consequences. It was just you and me like before. And it terrifies me how much I want to feel that again. The silence that followed was deafening. They looked at each other. 2 broken women, standing in an empty parking lot, with 12 years of pain between them and an impossible abyss to cross. And then, Emma took the step. She walked toward Grace. Slowly, giving her time to step back, to flee, to say no. But Grace didn't move. When they were face to face, so close they could feel each other's breath, Emma raised a hand and caressed her cheek. Grace closed her eyes at the contact, as if that simple gesture were too much. Tell me to leave, Emma whispered. Tell me this means nothing. Tell me you can live without me, and I'll go, forever, without looking back. Grace opened her eyes. They were filled with tears, with pain, with a love so deep it was impossible to ignore. I can't, she whispered. God, Emma, I can't. And they kissed. This time it wasn't like the first. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't impulse. It was surrender. Grace's hands clutched Emma's jacket, as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. Emma's lips explored Grace's with a tenderness she'd saved for 12 years, and the entire world disappeared. There was no hospital, no Austin, no husband, no New York, just them. 2 women who had loved each other since they were girls and who, despite time, despite distance, despite all barriers, still loved each other with an intensity that hurt. When they separated, both were crying. What now? Grace whispered, forehead against Emma's. I don't know, Emma responded, but I can't pretend this didn't happen. Me neither. They stayed like that, embracing in the middle of the parking lot, while the city continued its indifferent course. And for the first time in years, both allowed themselves to feel something they thought lost. Hope. But hope, as Emma would soon discover, can be the most dangerous emotion of all. Grace didn't get home until 1 a.m. She'd spent 3 hours in the car, parked on a quiet Hyde Park street, crying until she had no tears left. When she finally looked at herself in the rearview mirror, she saw a stranger. Swollen eyes, red lips, smudged makeup, disheveled hair. The very image of guilt. She entered her house trying to make as little noise as possible. It was a nice house in Westlake, 2 stories with a small yard Michael tended on weekends. A house that represented everything she was supposed to want: stability, respectability, normalcy. But now, as she climbed the stairs with her shoes in hand, she felt like an intruder in her own life. The bedroom was dark. Michael slept on the right side of the bed, as always. Grace went into the bathroom, took off her clothes, showered. The hot water didn't erase the taste of Emma's lips. It didn't erase the sensation of her hands on her face. It didn't erase the fact that she just kissed another woman while her husband slept 10 feet away. When she came out, Michael had woken up. "Where were you?" he asked, voice sleepy. "You said you'd be home by 11. Grace froze. Her mind searched for a lie. Fast. "I had to stay longer," she responded, getting under the sheets. Mr. Richardson, the patient in 304, had a complication. They needed all hands on deck. It was a lie. Emma's father had been stable all night. But Michael didn't know that, and he never would. "You should change shifts," he murmured, turning over. "You're killing yourself with so much work." "I know," Grace responded. "Soon." Michael went back to sleep. Grace stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling guilt devour her alive. She'd kissed Emma. Again. And this time she couldn't blame impulse. She couldn't say it was a mistake, because it had felt more real, more true, more right than anything she'd felt in the last 5 years. And that terrified her. Emma didn't sleep that night either. She returned to room 304 with her heart still racing and her lips still feeling the ghost of the kiss. Her father was still asleep. Sarah had gone to the hotel. And she was left alone with her thoughts, which were more dangerous than any insomnia. What had she done? She'd just kissed a married woman, not once, but twice. And the second time had been planned, conscious, with full intention. She felt like a homewrecker, like the villain of her own story. But at the same time, she couldn't regret it. She couldn't pretend that kiss hadn't been the most real thing she'd felt in years. Because Grace loved her. Still. After 12 years. After a marriage. After everything. And she loved Grace. She'd never stopped. But what now? The following days were hell of stolen glances and half conversations. Grace continued caring for Robert, but now there was a different tension in the air. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was anticipation. Every time their hands brushed passing a file. Every time their eyes met by accident. Every time they were alone in the room for 30 seconds before a nurse interrupted. It was unsustainable. And Michael started noticing something was wrong. "You're distant," he told her one night at dinner. They'd ordered Chinese takeout. Grace had barely touched her plate. "Is something wrong?" "I'm tired," she responded, without looking up. "Work is heavy." "Are you sure?" he pressed. "Because you've been acting weird for a week. You don't sleep, you barely eat, and when I talk to you, it's like you're not here." Grace felt panic starting to climb up her throat. "It's just stress," she lied. "Nothing more." Michael looked at her for a long moment. And then, as if deciding it wasn't worth insisting, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "But if you need to talk, I'm here." Grace nodded. But they both knew she wouldn't talk. She never did. For 5 years of marriage, she'd perfected the art of smiling and nodding while keeping all her true feelings in a locked box. And now that box was about to explode. On the 8th day, Sarah confronted Emma. She did it in the hospital cafeteria, during lunch, when Emma was distracted stirring coffee she wasn't going to drink. "Did you see her again?" Sarah asked, no beating around the bush. Emma looked up, surprised. "What?" "Grace," her sister clarified. "Did you see her outside the hospital?" "Because you've been acting like you're on another planet for a week. And I know that look. It's the same one you had when you were 19 and in love. Emma closed her eyes. She couldn't lie to Sarah. She never could. Yes, she admitted. We met. One night. In the parking lot. And we kissed. Sarah let out a low whistle. Emma, I know, she interrupted. I know it's wrong. I know she's married. I know I shouldn't. But, Sarah, when I'm with her, it's like the last 12 years didn't exist. Like I can finally breathe. Sarah took her hand across the table. And what does she say? That she's confused, scared, that she doesn't know what to do. And you? Me neither, Emma admitted. I came here for Dad, not to destroy her marriage, but I can't pretend I don't feel anything. Sarah sighed. You know what's the worst part of all this? She asked. That I understand her, Grace, I mean, because we grew up in the same city, with the same conservative families, and I know how hard it must have been for her to stay when you left. I know that marrying a man was probably the only way to survive she found. I know, Emma responded, tears in her eyes. And that's why I feel worse, because it's not just me. It's her entire life that's at stake. So what are you going to do? Emma looked out the window, toward the parking lot where everything had changed. I don't know, she whispered. Wait, see what she decides. And if she decides she wants to stay with her husband, I'll have to respect it. Can you? Respect it? Emma didn't respond, because they both knew the truth. She probably couldn't. On the 10th day, everything exploded. Grace was leaving the hospital at 9 p.m. when she saw her mother's car parked in front of the main entrance. She immediately knew something was wrong. Her mother, Patricia Miller, never came to the hospital. She'd hated hospitals since her own father died in one. She approached the car. Her mother rolled down the window. Get in, she ordered, with a voice that brooked no argument. Grace obeyed. She sat in the passenger seat, heart beating so hard she thought her mother could hear it. Is something wrong? She asked, trying to sound casual. That's what I want to know, Patricia responded, without looking at her. Michael called today. Says you're acting strange, that you're coming home late, that you won't talk to him. What's going on, Grace? Nothing, she lied. I've just been tired. Work. Is it because of that woman? Her mother interrupted. The world stopped. Grace turned her head so fast she felt a pull in her neck. What? Emma Richardson, her mother said, pronouncing the name like poison. Your father told me she's here, that her father is hospitalized, that you're taking care of him. Grace felt the ground open beneath her feet. Mom, did you see her? Patricia asked, finally turning to look at her. Her eyes were hard, accusing. Did you talk to her? She's my patient, Grace responded, voice trembling. I can't. Yes, you can, her mother interrupted. You can ask for a shift change, have another nurse assigned. You can stay away from her. Mom, it's not what you think. Isn't it? Patricia asked. Because I know you, Grace. I know that look. I've seen it before, and I thought we'd gotten past that. I thought with Michael you'd finally found your way. I did, Grace exclaimed, feeling tears building. I'm married. I have a life. Just because she's here doesn't mean that. Then stay away from her, her mother ordered. If you really love your husband, if you really value the family you built, stay away. Grace closed her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and devastating. It's not that easy, she whispered. Yes, it is, Patricia responded. Choose, Grace. Your family or her. Your life or a ghost from the past. But choose now, because if you make the same mistake again, this time there'll be no forgiveness. And without saying anything more, she gestured for her to get out of the car. Grace got out stumbling. She watched her mother drive away, taking with her any illusion that this could end well. She stood on the sidewalk, crying, until a hand touched her shoulder. It was Emma. "I saw you from the window," she said, voice full of concern. "What happened?" Grace looked at her, and in that moment, with her mother's ultimatum still echoing in her ears, she made a decision. "We need to talk," she said. "Now, I need you to understand something. Comment what you'd do in Grace's place, because what's coming, nobody's ready for this." They went to a nearby cafe, one of those small places on South Congress that stayed open late. They sat at a back table, away from curious eyes. Grace ordered an Americano she didn't touch. Emma ordered water she didn't drink either. "My mom knows," Grace said without preamble. "Not everything, but she knows you're here, and she gave me an ultimatum." Emma felt her stomach drop. "What kind of ultimatum?" "You or my family," Grace responded. "You or my marriage. You or everything I've built these 12 years. Silence. The cafe kept buzzing around them. Laughter, conversations, normal life. While they sat in the middle of disaster. "And what are you going to choose?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. She could see it in Grace's eyes. "I don't know," Grace whispered. "And that's what's killing me. Because a month ago, the answer would have been obvious. My family, my husband, my life. But now I look at you and remember who I was before I became who I'm supposed to be," Grace responded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I remember the girl who loved without fear, who dreamed of a different life, who believed love was enough." "Love is never enough," Emma said bitterly. "If it were, we wouldn't be here." "So what do we do?" Emma took her hand across the table. She interlaced their fingers. And for a moment, just one moment, she pretended they lived in a world where this was allowed. "I waited 12 years, she said. "I can wait a little longer. Until you're ready. Until you know what you want." "What if I'm never ready?" Grace asked. "What if I'm too scared?" "Then I'll leave," Emma responded. "For real this time. And I won't come back." Grace squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. "I don't want you to leave," she whispered, "but I don't know if I can ask you to stay either." "Don't ask me," Emma said. "Just let me be here until my father gets better. Until you have clarity. And then, whatever happens, I'll accept it." It was a lie. They both knew it. But it was the only lie that kept them sane in that moment. They stayed in the cafe until it closed. Then they walked through Austin's streets, without direction, without destination. Just two lost women in a city that had watched them grow, and now watched them break. And when they finally said goodbye, with a stolen kiss on a dark street, they both knew this wouldn't end well. But neither had the courage to stop it. Day 12 dawned different. Robert Richardson had improved considerably. The antibiotics had worked. Respiratory therapy was showing results. The doctor had said in another week he could go home with outpatient care. It was, in every sense, good news. But for Emma, it meant her time in Austin was running out. She stood by the window of room 304, watching the city wake under the Texas sun. The streets began filling with people. Street vendors setting up their stalls. The sound of delivery trucks. Life continued, indifferent to the drama unfolding within the hospital walls. "You're very quiet," her father said from the bed. He could speak without much effort now. Color had returned to his face. "What's wrong?" Emma turned her head. Robert was looking at her with those gray eyes that had always been able to read her soul. "Nothing, Dad. Just thinking." "About New York?" he asked. "Or about Grace?" The name fell like a stone in still water. Emma approached the bed, sat in the chair she'd occupied for 12 days. For the first time since arriving, She really looked at her father. The gray hair she didn't remember, the wrinkles around his eyes, the fragility of a man who had always seemed invincible. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "I'm your father," Robert responded with a weak smile. "I've known you since before you could talk. And the way you look at her, it's the same as 12 years ago." Emma felt tears building. "Dad, You don't have to explain," he interrupted, extending his hand. Emma took it. "What I want to know is, are you happy?" The question hit her like a punch. "No," she admitted. "I haven't been happy in 12 years. "And her?" "Neither." Robert nodded slowly, as if processing information he already knew. "When you left," he said, voice tired, "I thought I was doing the right thing, letting you go, letting you find your way. But I never stopped wondering if I'd failed you, if I should have fought harder to understand, to accept. Dad, it wasn't your fault." "Let me finish," he said. "I've had a lot of time here, connected to these tubes, thinking about my life, about my decisions. And I realized something. I spent so much time worrying about what people would think, about what was right, that I forgot the most important thing, that you're my daughter, and you deserve to be happy, no matter what that happiness looks like." Tears now flowed freely down Emma's face. "Are you saying that?" "I'm saying life is short," Robert responded. "Too short to waste it living halfway, to hide, to deny who you are. And if that girl is what makes you happy, then fight for her. Because regretting what you did hurts, but regretting what you didn't do, that destroys you." Emma leaned forward and hugged her father, sobbing against his shoulder. He stroked her hair, like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "Don't thank me," he responded. "Just be brave, braver than I was." That same afternoon, Grace received a message. It was from Emma. 3 words: "Need to see you, urgent." Her heart lurched. She'd spent 2 days avoiding her after the conversation with her mother. 2 days pretending the ultimatum didn't exist. 2 days living a lie that felt increasingly unsustainable. They met at the same cafe on South Congress. This time Emma was already there, sitting at the same back table, with 2 cups of coffee waiting. Grace sat. Her hands trembled. "What happened?" she asked. Emma took a deep breath, and what she said next changed everything. "My father's getting out of the hospital in a week," she began. "Which means I have to go back to New York. I have projects waiting, a life waiting, and I need to know. I need to know if there's a reason to stay." The silence between them was so dense, it could be cut with a knife. "Emma, no," she interrupted. "Let me finish. I've been running for 12 years. 12 years building a life that feels empty because you're not in it. And when I came here, I thought it was just for my father. But it was for you. It always was for you. And if I leave now, without knowing if you have the courage to choose yourself, I'll never forgive myself." "What are you asking me?" Grace asked, voice trembling. "I'm asking you to be honest," Emma responded. "With me. With yourself. Do you want this? Do you want a chance to be happy? Or are you going to stay in a marriage that's killing you inside because it's easier than fighting?" The words floated in the air like unexploded bombs. Grace closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel everything. The love she felt for Emma, the fear of disappointing her family, the guilt about Michael, the rage about the 12 lost years, the hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have a different life. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So scared of what my family will say, of what people will think, of losing everything. And of losing yourself? Emma asked. Of spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave? Grace let out a bitter laugh. You've been brave for 12 years, she said. I've been a coward for 12 years. Then stop being one, Emma responded, taking her hand. Now, today, choose. And Grace, after 12 years of living for others, finally chose herself. I'm going to talk to Michael, she said, voice trembling but firm. Tonight, I'm going to tell him the truth. If you've been waiting for this moment, the subscribe button is the only thing that guarantees you see what happens next. Grace arrived at her house in Westlake at 8 at night. Michael was in the living room watching a football game. He stood when he saw her enter. You're home early, he said, smiling. Want me to order dinner? We need to talk, Grace responded. Michael's smile faded. He knew that tone. It was the tone of bad news, of conversations that change everything. What's wrong? He asked, turning off the TV. Grace stood in the middle of the living room, hands clasped in front of her, gathering every ounce of courage she had. I've been lying to you, she began, for a long time, and I can't keep doing it. Michael went pale. Is there someone else? He asked. Yes, she responded, and the word came out easier than expected. But it's not what you think. It's not something new. It's someone from the past, someone I never let go. Who? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Her name is Emma, Grace said, and I've loved her since I was 7 years old. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, as if all the years of marriage were being rewritten in his head. A woman? He finally asked. Yes. And you've been all this time? No, Grace responded quickly. I never cheated on you. Not physically, until 2 weeks ago when she came back. But emotionally. Emotionally, I was never completely yours. And that's not fair. To either of us. Michael dropped onto the couch. He covered his face with his hands. Why did you marry me? He asked, voice broken. If you didn't love me? I did love you, Grace interrupted, sitting beside him. I do love you. Just not the way you deserve. I love you like you love a friend. Someone who takes care of you. But not like you love the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Michael lowered his hands. He had tears in his eyes. And she is? He asked. She's that person. Grace nodded, unable to speak. Michael laughed. It was a bitter laugh, full of pain. I should have known, he said. You never looked at me the way you look at her. I never felt like you were completely present. And I thought that with time. That eventually. I'm sorry, Grace whispered. I'm so sorry, Michael. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, he responded. And now what? You want a divorce? The word floated between them, heavy and final. Yes, Grace responded. I think it's best. For both of us. You deserve to be with someone who loves you completely. Without reservations. Without ghosts from the past. Michael stayed silent for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window, looked at the dark street. You know what's the worst part? He finally said. That part of me always knew. That there was something in you I could never reach. And I convinced myself it was enough. That having just a part of you was better than nothing. You deserve everything, Grace said, approaching him. Not just a part. Michael turned his head. He looked at her with a mixture of pain and resignation. Go to her, he said. I'm not going to fight for someone who was never completely mine, but give me time to process, to heal. And please, don't make me see you happy with her. Not yet. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered, for understanding, for not hating me. Oh, I hate you a little, he responded with a sad smile. But I also understand you, and that makes me hate myself for not being enough. It's not that, Grace said. It never was. But Michael wasn't listening anymore. He'd locked himself in his own pain. And Grace knew the best thing she could do was give him space. That night, she slept in the guest room, and the next day, she began packing her things. 3 weeks later, Robert Richardson was discharged from Seton Medical Center on a sunny Tuesday. Sarah came from Dallas to help with the transfer. Emma had rented a temporary apartment in Hyde Park to stay close while her father recovered completely. And Grace had left her house in Westlake. It wasn't easy. None of this was easy. Her mother hadn't spoken to her in 2 weeks. Her father had called her a disappointment before hanging up. Some relatives had blocked her on social media. The rumor had spread through Austin like wildfire. Grace Harper had left her husband for a woman. But there were also surprises. Her younger sister, Katie, had called crying. I always knew there was something, she'd said, and I'm glad you're finally free. Some college friends had contacted her with messages of support. And Dorothy, the night shift nurse, had given her a hug and whispered, Life's too short to live a lie, honey. Grace had moved to a small apartment near Zilker Park. A simple place, no luxuries. But it was completely hers. She'd filed for divorce. Michael hadn't fought. He'd signed the papers with trembling hands and red eyes, then told her he never wanted to see her again. And she'd respected that. Because some wounds needed distance to heal. It was Saturday afternoon when Emma knocked on her door. Grace opened, still in pajamas, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She hadn't slept well in days. The weight of her decisions kept her awake. Hi, Emma said with a soft smile. Hi, Grace responded. They stood there, in the doorway, looking at each other. And for the first time in weeks, Grace felt like she could breathe. Can I come in? Emma asked. Of course. The apartment was small but cozy. Boxes still unpacked. Minimal furniture. But there was light coming through the windows, and that was enough. How are you? Emma asked. Grace shrugged. Surviving, she responded. My family won't talk to me. My mother says I'm ruining my life. And she's probably right. Do you believe that? Emma asked. Grace stayed silent. She thought about the last 3 weeks, about the pain, about the loss, about the nights crying, about the days wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. But she also thought about mornings waking without the heaviness in her chest, about being able to look at herself in the mirror without feeling like a lie, about the possibility, for the first time in years, of being herself. No, she finally responded. I think I finally started living. Emma smiled. And in that smile, Grace saw everything she'd lost and everything she could gain. What's going to happen now? Grace asked. With us? I don't know, Emma admitted. My father's better. I could go back to New York, resume my life there, but I don't want to, Emma said. I don't want to go back to a life without you, not after all this. Grace felt tears starting to build. What are you saying? I'm saying New York can wait, Emma responded, approaching. I'm saying I want to stay here, in Austin, with you, if you want. And your firm? Your work? I can work from here, Emma said. Or I can start something new. I don't know. All I know is I spent 12 years running, and I'm tired of running. Grace closed her eyes. She felt Emma's hands on her face, the warmth of her closeness, the smell of gardenia and vanilla that was still the same after so many years. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, Emma responded. But this time, you don't have to be alone. And they kissed. It wasn't like the other kisses. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't guilt. It was promise. It was the beginning of something they'd waited 12 years for. Something they could finally have without hiding. When they separated, both were crying. It won't be easy, Grace said. There'll be criticism, comments. My family. I know, Emma interrupted. But you know what? I don't care, because having you is worth more than anyone's approval. Grace laughed through tears. When did you become so brave? When I realized the only life worth living is the authentic one, Emma responded. Even if it's difficult. Even if it hurts. Because living halfway isn't living. They stayed embraced in the middle of the apartment, while outside the city continued its course. Austin, with its streets of live oaks and its unshakable traditions. A city that had watched them grow, that had witnessed their forbidden love. And that now, perhaps, could see them be happy. 2 months later, Grace and Emma walked through Zilker Park, holding hands under the Texas sunset. The sky was tinted orange and pink. The live oaks bloomed, filling the air with their characteristic scent. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't a fairy tale. Grace had lost some family members in the process. Her mother still wasn't speaking to her, though Katie had said she was processing, and that with time she might be able to accept it. Michael had moved to Houston, trying to start over away from the memories. But there were also gains, new friendships, an LGBTQ+ community in Austin that Grace never knew existed, support from unexpected places. And Emma had stayed. She'd opened a small architecture firm in Hyde Park. Modest projects at first, but with potential to grow. They didn't live together yet. That would come with time. But they spent afternoons together, weekends, nights when they could. And for the first time in 12 years, both slept without nightmares. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked, squeezing her hand. Grace looked at the live oaks, the same trees under which they'd first kissed when they were 17 years old. The same trees that had witnessed their promises of eternity. "I'm thinking it was worth it," she responded. "Everything. The fear, the pain, the losses. It was worth it for this." "For what?" Emma asked, smiling. "For being able to walk with you," Grace said, "without hiding, without lying, without pretending to be someone I'm not." Emma stopped. She turned toward her. And in the middle of the park, with people passing around them, some looking with approval, others with disapproval, most indifferent, she kissed her. And this time, when they separated, Grace didn't look around to see who'd seen them. She didn't feel shame. She didn't feel fear. She only felt love. "I love you," she whispered. "I've always loved you." "And I love you," Emma responded, "since I was 7 years old, and until the last day of my life." They kept walking, hand in hand, while the sun set over Austin. 2 women who had lost 12 years, but who had finally found their way back to each other. And though the path hadn't been easy, though there would still be challenges ahead, they knew something with absolute certainty. They were together, and that was all that mattered. 6 months later, Robert Richardson organized a family dinner. It was at his house, fully recovered now. Sarah had come from Dallas, and to Grace's surprise, he'd invited both her and Emma. "It won't be easy," Emma had warned her that afternoon as they got ready. "Your mom might be there, and you know how." "I know," Grace interrupted, "but Mr. Richardson invited me, and after everything he did for us, I think we should go." When they arrived, the house was full. Sarah, her husband, some uncles, and sure enough, Patricia Miller was there. The silence that fell when Grace and Emma entered holding hands was palpable. Patricia looked at them. Her face was a mask of conflicting emotions, pain, disappointment. But also, if Grace wasn't mistaken, something that might be the beginning of a reluctant acceptance. "Welcome," Robert said, breaking the silence. "Come in. Dinner's ready." It was awkward. There were moments of tension, forced conversations. But there was also laughter. Sarah told stories from Emma's childhood. Robert joked about his years at the hardware stores. And slowly, very slowly, the ice began to break. At the end of the night, when Grace and Emma were saying goodbye, Patricia approached. "Grace," she said, voice trembling. "Mom." Patricia looked at her daughter, then at Emma, and then, with tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't understand," she whispered. "I still don't understand, but you're my daughter, and I don't want to lose you." Grace felt her heart break and rebuild at the same time. "You don't have to lose me," she responded, taking her hand. "You never had to lose me, Mom. I just need you to accept me, as I am." Patricia nodded slowly. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't complete forgiveness. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, that was all that was needed. That night, as they walked back to their apartment under Austin's starry sky, Grace stopped. "What's wrong?" Emma asked. Grace looked at her. This woman who had waited 12 years. This woman who had come back for her. This woman who had the courage to choose her even when it meant losing everything. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For not giving up," Grace responded. "For believing I was worth it. For loving me even when I couldn't love myself." Emma smiled. That smile that had captivated Grace since she was 7 years old. "You were always worth it," she said. "You always were." And as they walked back home, hand in hand beneath the live oaks of Hyde Park, they both knew they'd found something very few people find in a lifetime. A love that survives time, distance, fear, everything. A love that, finally, after 12 years, was free. If you want the continuation of this story, write it in the comments, because that's the only way I'll know what you want. And don't forget that YouTube only prioritizes subscribers. So subscribe now so you don't miss the next story that will make you believe in love and second chances. This is just the beginning. See you soon.